though Prey is set in the past, it takes the Predator franchise forward. Roll the thing. Prey was released on the 5th of August on Hulu, and it was directed by Dan Trachtenberg. Now, that's a name that is familiar, and if it's not so familiar to you, this is the same man that directed 10 Cloverfield Lane, and that is a really fun movie, highly recommended. If you've not seen it yet, this is a recommendation for that. And that's what we do on this channel, we recommend, even while we review. So yeah, it stars Amber Midthunder as Naru, and Naru is from the Comanche tribe. And this entire setting, remember I said this earlier that even though it's set in the past, it takes the franchise forward. So this was way back in 1917, and this is like 300 plus years before the very first Predator movie. And you see, I think that's something that I really like about this movie. Even though it's a sequel, it can also serve as a prequel, and that's something that applies with the entire concept of predators in general. Predators are an alien race that go to other worlds conquering. Like, their entire purpose is to conquer, and the greater your prey, the greater your rank amongst the predator tribe or the predator clan or the predator race. And that was something that I think they really played on in this story. Now, what am I saying? If you've seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, there's going to be a little spoiler here. Well, depending on what you call the spoiler, because what I'm mentioning is also in the trailer. So what am I saying? Now, the thing about this entire story is, unlike the very first movie and all the other movies going forward, where you see enemies battling the predator with guns and bombs and all these other explosives, right? This was 1917, so it wasn't about guns and bombs and explosives, no. It was about bows and arrows. And it's the Comanche tribe, so these are people that their major way of fighting is traps and bows and arrows and spears. So now imagine that. Imagine going all tribal and primal against a predator that most times tends to have better technology than you. So, the stakes are already really high, because you're like, how would someone with bows and arrows fight against an alien race that is much stronger, physically stronger, and then a lot more advanced too. But that's the thing about this movie that I really like. It took it back to the basics. If you remember the first Predator movie that had Arnold and all the men and everybody with muscles and everything and guns and everything, at the end of the day, the final showdown between Arnold's character and the Predator came down to the basics. You had to understand the Predator's weaknesses and use it against the Predator. It wasn't just about what caliber of weapon he was using. No, it was about brains over brawn, and that was the same thing in this movie. That was what I really did like about this movie. There are different scenes in this movie, even before we get to see a showdown with the Predator, that involved just survival during that time, having to face off against wild animals. It was just crazy. This was stuff that I think the director did really well. The director and his team, they really showcased this very well. That in this world, it was a case of you either survive or you get destroyed. So it was even a case of predators, but man being the prime predator because of our intellect. And then at the end of the day, you now meet another race that has a greater hunting intellect and then has more gadgets than you. Because there was a part in the movie where it was looking like the predator was about to be overpowered by the humans, right? And what did he do? He just went adaptive camouflage mode, went invincible, and nobody could see him anymore. I was like, that's a bitch ass move from the predator, because it was like he knew he was going to die. But then I was like, nah, screw this. I have more tech than you. I'm going to kill you guys. And he did that, and that was just so much fun to watch. And that's the thing at the end of the day. So it's all came down to brain over bronze. It all came down to intellect and skill over intellect and skill with what you have available to you over any other thing that your opponent might have. And that was one thing that I really appreciated about this, because at the end of the day, you would see that even the character Naru, of all the human characters that had to face up against the Predator, even though she was smart, she was probably the weakest physically. But then that wasn't what gave her the upper hand. What gave her the upper hand at the end of the day was understanding the Predator's weaknesses, using it to her advantage, and then even using the Predator's own devices against the Predator. So at the end of the day, what did all of that boil down to? Her smart. And that was one thing I really did enjoy about this movie. Overall, I think it was a fun watch. I know it was released straight to digital for the most part, but if I had gone to see it in the cinema, I would have really liked it. And the thing is, even though a lot of the focus is on the human characters versus the predator himself, I don't know whether it's just me, but you can't mention Amber Hunter's character Naru without mentioning Sari, a trusty dog, because a dog actually did play an important part for a lot of parts in the movie. One thing I also did like about this movie is the jump scares. So even though it's not horror, the jump scares were nice. So it had this thriller bit at some point, and I think that was nice. One thing you will also notice is you can actually feel a palpable sense of dread for the characters in this movie. Like this predator or whatever it is that was coming for their life was actually there to take over their life. So this was something that you could feel, you could actually go on this journey of fear with them. Now I'll say though, a major con for me, and this is something that I don't understand why it's happening a lot more these days in some movies, is the lack of subtitles. Now I remember mentioning this in West Side Story, my West Side Story review. You can check that out up here. But the same thing happened here. So there is another tribe, and that's the funny thing. So these are Comanches, they're speaking English, right? But then there are Frenchmen that came into this settlement, and I kid you not, and if you've seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. But for the entire stretch of this movie with them talking, there wasn't a single line of subtitle for their dialogue. Personally, I think that was a very stupid decision. It was dumb. It shouldn't have happened, because this movie was really good to watch, honestly, and it sucks you in, but it detracted from the entertainment for me. So I can't imagine watching this in the cinema, and if there were no advanced reviews, what would I have done? How would I have enjoyed that moment that had this French people and our main characters interacting? So imagine watching a movie and having to Google what the translation, what the dialogues were, because that was what I did. And at some point, I actually, even in my course of reading, I found a spoiler for a scene that I had not watched in the movie. Honestly, I don't know why this is becoming, well, I won't call this a trend, because I've only seen it in 2 movies so far, but this was an otherwise great movie for the most part without that major problem. It takes nothing from you guys to put the subtitles in the movie, and it's almost making it look like you are giving your audience the middle finger, like, yeah, go learn French or just forget this part of the movie existed. I mentioned this in my West Side Story review, and I'm going to say it again. A lot of deaf people also watch movies, right? So they rely on subtitles. So even if other people can hear the words, which is in English, they still sometimes need subtitles. Now think of the deaf people that they can neither hear the words nor read the subtitles. Tell me how they're going to enjoy a movie. Or are you also giving the deaf people the middle finger? So you're just like, the entire audience, whether you can hear the words or not, screw you, we don't care. Because it makes no sense that there were no subtitles for this part of the movie. But yeah, that's honestly, minus that part, because that's just a major con for me for this movie. Minus that part, I'll say the only other exception was the final showdown with the Predator. Yeah, it was between our protagonist and the Predator, and you can tell that there was no way she would have been able to overpower him. But yeah, I mean, with some luck here and some plot armor here, she did overpower him. But it does not negate the fact that she used a lot of her brains for this movie. She was clearly the brains of this entire operation, and it was not shoehorned or anything. No, clearly she earned her stride as the brains of this operation. So I'll say overall it was a fun movie to watch. I did enjoy it. I would absolutely recommend it to you guys. Yes, have Google handy or something if you want to understand what the French guys are saying, because there were no subtitles for it. I searched, there were none, so I had to look online for translations. But outside that, it was a dope movie. I really did enjoy it, and it gets an 8/10 from us here at GVNNaija. One thing I will say for a fact is, I would love to see more of this. I would love to see the Predator even go further back in time or somewhere in the future, because that's the fun thing about the Predator race. They can do well in any timeline. So you can have, I will not be surprised, and I would love to see maybe the next Predator movie will happen in maybe the Wild Wild West. So imagine cowboys versus the Predator, something like that. Or maybe the Predator happens I don't know, maybe before the First World War or something like that. So you understand? Because they can do well in any circumstance, and with the right script and the right director, it can actually work well. So yeah, that's it for this review. If you've loved what you watch, don't forget to subscribe, share, like, comment. Please remember to ring the bell, because then you get notified immediately we'll drop something. It's been Tech for GVNNaija. Live long and prosper.